Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Soccer Scene, episode 29, with myself, Adrian Finnin, and Noel O'Connor, as we discuss all things Treaty United, Noel, this week. Great news for Treaty United, Noel. They won 3-0 against Maynooth in the last 16 of the FAI Cup at the weekend, and the current lead, David, Willie Armshaw, all on the score sheet. Obviously, it was a banana skin, Noel, that we discussed in depth last week, that there was a banana skin for Treaty, but to keep a clean sheet, get your 3 goals, it was a professional performance.
Yeah, I think they'll be delighted with it. I think Tommy will be really happy. You know, we did see that, look, every cup game can be a banana skin. They certainly had a few issues with Usher early in the game, and the fact that they were going away from home and obviously playing on a 4G pitch as well, you know, which hadn't really suited them the week before. I thought it was a really good result and a good performance as well, a bit more treaty-like, if you like, than the previous week against Athlone Town.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose another pleasing aspect for Tommy, Noel, would be the fact that he was missing Mark Ludden, Jack Lynch as well. So there was 2 of your most experienced players, your captain and your vice captain, missing from a game like that as well. And Ben O'Riordan too, and to still come out on top in quite a relatively professional manner was pleasing for them.
Yeah, I think the big difference really was that they show that patience that has stood to them well, really, in terms of not being too adventurous against the opposition, you know, regardless of who they are. They certainly didn't do that against Athlone a couple of weeks ago, you know, where the game looked very, very open in the first 20 or 25 minutes. Each team were kind of taking terms of attacking, which was kind of very unusual from a treaty point of view. And they paid the price there, but certainly they were content to sit in and, you know, not be too adventurous and let the opposition Maynooth come at them, and they were nice and patient, and they scored at the right time as well, that first goal, to give them a nice cushion at half time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Kern back on the score sheet for Treaty once more as well. The goal that we'll probably discuss most, Noel, will probably be Lee Devitt's solo effort. You know, he started the move, the attacking move, also finished it off, beating a few players at the end. Maybe un-Lee Devitt-like as such, but a really good goal.
Yeah, but he's kind of shown signs of getting into those areas which, you know, we haven't seen before. Maybe because at the start of the year he was playing more or less on the left-hand side as regards being in the central where he is now, and we did touch on the fact that he was unlucky not to score after picking up a good position against Waterford United a couple of weeks ago. He'll certainly be happy with that goal, and he's a guy that in the last few weeks has certainly shown a bit more form, if you like, in a kind of a troublesome area for Treaty. It's like we would have felt a few weeks ago that none of the central midfielders were playing, you know, kind of anywhere well. But since Mark Walsh has come back in and released Callum McNamara in there, and the fact that Lee Devitt has looked like he's coming into a bit of form, you know, will certainly be something that'll please the manager, you know, for the next part of the season, where there is a lot of big games coming, including the quarter-final of the FAI Cup.
Yeah, that leads me perfectly into that point, Noel, as well. There's a hugely competitive quarter-final lineup facing Treaty, obviously, as we know. You've got your possible glamour ties, Noel. You've got the likes of Derry there. You've got Bohemians. You've got Shelbourne. You've got Shamrock Rovers, Dundalk, all in the draw. You have also UCD, another Premier side in the draw after overcoming Galway. And then you have a fellow First Division side in Waterford, who are obviously ahead of Treaty in the table. So no matter who Treaty play against, they're going to be the underdogs. I suppose that's a tag they don't mind, and Tommy Barrett has insisted that they don't mind that, and it's a free shot now in the next round. You know, I suppose, look, if you were to look at it, Noel, the 5 teams that I mentioned at the very start, they'd be really up against it against any of those teams, you know, the really good Premier Division pedigree. Obviously, UCD coming up, you'd imagine Treaty could have a chance in that game, and obviously against Waterford they could as well. It's hard to know which one you'd want, Noel. Would you want the kind of a tie where you'd have a big crowd against Shamrock Rovers, either home or away, or the likes of a Dundalk home or away? Or would you feel like, well, we could have a crack off Waterford or UCD here if you're in the Treaty camp? We might actually make a semi-final.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, Tommy will be saying they're underdogs. He'll certainly be telling the truth this time that they're underdogs, because every team, you know, people were saying to me, I was a bit surprised that, you know, UCD beat Galway. Well, at the end of the day, Galway are a Premier side, you know, and UCD are a First Division side. So I wasn't that really surprised about it. I'm sure they wouldn't. Wait.
Or the other way around. You had it mixed up there.
Yeah, UCD being the Premier side at the moment, and Galway being the First Division side at the moment. would they want to play Waterford? I'm not too sure. You know, they could meet them another couple of times again this season. And look, they haven't really barred the game in the Marcus Field where Waterford were down to 10 men. You know, they're certainly not a team that, you know, that they've done quite well against, you know, in the same line maybe as Cork bar the match a few weeks ago. Whereas if it was Galway, for example, you'd say, well, you know, they've been there or thereabouts bar one game. You'd be inclined to think that if you're up against one of those big sides like in Dublin, you know, Bows or Shamrock Rovers in particular, you nearly as well have to play them away from home because of the, you know, the financial return you'll get. And I'm sure they wouldn't be mad about getting someone like UCD at home, because it wouldn't be one that would capture the imagination of anybody really. And, you know, it still would be a very difficult game. People wouldn't give UCD maybe the credit that they deserve, the fact that they are a Premier side. But look, they'll probably wish that they won't get an away, say, to Dundalk or Derry as well, which probably would be tricky enough, even though there would be financial reward there as well. But at this stage in the last 8, you know, they've done really well to get there, and it's, you know, you're kind of in bonus territory. So I'm sure they're looking forward to the draw. We spoke about it last week. It's another way to keep guys, you know, tuned into the season. You find that people get a bit tired, you know, coming down the home straight with only 6 or 7 games left to go, and certainly that's something that would really keep the enthusiasm there, and it's something that's nice to look forward to in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I suppose, would it be fair to say, Noel, your best draw from a financial standpoint would be the likes of a Shamrock Rovers away, and the best draw from an advancement point in terms of getting to the semi-final would be Waterford at home, who'd have already beaten, even though they were beaten by them. And I suppose as well, as you said, probably the worst draw in a financial sense maybe be the likes of a UCD at home. I'd say it's fair to say that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough, and they'll be difficult as well now, you know, whether at that stage they're really looking at their own future in the Premier League, and they're going to have a right ding-dong battle there with Finn Harps in particular to see who gets that playoff place. But UCD, like even last year, you know, they did cause Treaty obviously problems at home in that playoff game. And I'm sure most of the players as well, they'd certainly be looking for a glamour tie and a kind of a no-lose game, which is what it would be really if it was the likes of Shamrock Rovers and Bows away.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll all be tuned in tomorrow evening from 6:10, where on the 2FM, the draw will take place for the quarterfinal of the Extra.E FAI Cup. We'll definitely be tuned in to that one with bated breath. Going back to the bread and butter, Noel, the league, which is obviously coming down the home stretch. You've 6 games left. Treaty United, they take on Cobh Ramblers on Friday night in what is a huge game for Treaty. We obviously know that Cobh Ramblers beat Treaty in this exact fixture earlier on the season at 3-2, which was a very big surprise for everyone at the time. And it was kind of in around the time where Treaty were enduring a poor enough run of form. That's changed to a degree now, obviously barring the Athlone performance realistically. But, you know, looking at it now, Treaty management players will be desperate to win this game and keep that 4-point gap over Wexford now, especially a home game coming down the home stretch. Yeah,
I think they will. I think they're in a lot better position as well. You know, and the fact that Cobh took a couple of points off Wexford a couple of weeks ago will certainly sharpen their mind and maybe get rid of any kind of shred of complacency which possibly could have been there. You know, I don't know whether, like, I know it's so difficult sometimes to explain to players that, you know, even though a team that has only won, you know, 2 or 3 games in 25 or 26 can be difficult, and that was proven obviously by those 2 sets of results for Wexford and Treaty a couple of weeks ago. But I think, in fairness to Tommy, he learned from the Athlone game in terms of starting Dean George and Enda Curran in the team. I'd be confident enough that he'll do the same thing. I think, you know, while success is going to be an important part of that group, I think he's more suitable to start to a team that, you know, maybe are higher up the table and who are going to dominate the ball. And, you know, he's very good at kind of releasing the pressure for the likes of Treaty, you know, when they get into those areas where they can play the ball in behind the opposition. When you see the goals that they've got, and in fairness to him, has continued that on Saturday night, although, see, he missed a penalty, which was his second one in 2 or 3 games, and maybe that's something that Tommy is going to have to look at, in having someone like Mark Ludden, you know, and his record from penalties. It might be the time maybe to let Mark be the number 1 guy to take the penalties in what could be very, very crucial games in the next few weeks. But you certainly have to be confident that they'll be good enough to beat Cobh at the weekend.
Certainly. I know there's been a lot of talk, obviously, since Shane Keegan went in. Noel, he had a poor start. They've got closer to teams, Noel, in that, for instance, just for one example, they lost to Cork City very late on, obviously, with Rory Keaton scoring recently. But realistically, they haven't really been getting results. So, as I said, Treaty have to be favourites going into this, but, they'll have to make it count.
They'll have to, and there certainly is no easy games, from here on in. And, they will be watching what's happening in Wexford. I think it is a kind of a two-horse race there. It'll be interesting to see how Wexford react to that defeat, and it must have been draining enough, and the fact that they played extra time with Dundalk as well. And they have a real fixture, against Waterford, who are in really good form. And in the last game, Wexford beat Waterford, so you'll be saying, that there's a bit of revenge that Waterford will be looking for. So I think it'll be another big opportunity for Treaty, one that they kind of slipped up on against Athlone to put a bit of space between themselves and Wexford, with the games running out. And, what they certainly don't want is to be playing Wexford in the last game of the season with Wexford still in with a shout that, for example, a win would leapfrog Treaty if there was only 2 points between them or something like that, for example. So I think this is a pivotal week, for Treaty. If you look at the two games, you're at home to Cobh or you're playing Waterford United, you certainly would prefer Treaty's fixture. They scored 3 goals last week and kept a clean sheet. They're still in the cup, and if their attitude is right and they are about their business, they're really, really strong favourites, and they should be good enough to pick up the 3 points.
Yeah, and the general consensus, Noel, as well, is that we know that the arrivals have made a big difference to Treaty in terms of success with Erdogan and Ben O'Riordan particularly. The general consensus is, Noel, that Ben O'Riordan, while actually being, from what I remember, a centre-back for most of his career in the League of Ireland anyway, particularly with Cobh Ramblers, he's filled in at right-back, obviously scored that spectacular goal against Cork City as well. But the general consensus is that, even though Charlie Fleming was actually popular. I know he wasn't popular with yourself now, but he was popular within the Treaty camp. But there has been a general consensus that, there's an upgrade in terms of the defensive capabilities with Ben O'Riordan there.
Listen, there's no doubt about that. And look, bar what you see, and I never met Charlie Fleming. I only kind of judged him on what I saw on the pitch, and I didn't think that he was a great defender. I'd kind of stand over that. I think if you went back and checked how many games that they've played since and how many goals that they've conceded, and playing the same teams over and over again. Although I would put the caveat in that Ben had a kind of a rough enough or a ropey enough night against Athlone, and I hope that's just kind of a glitch, if you like. But certainly him with him in the side instead of Charlie, they've certainly looked a bit stronger, and even a centre back, with the change there, they're certainly stronger there as well, and they've conceded a lot less goals, I'm sure, in the last 8 or 10 games than they had. And there was some poor results came around the mid-season, but in fairness, the changes have worked, and they certainly look in good form, and they're in a very strong position to make these playoff places.
Yeah, and as well as O'Riordan, obviously Mark Ludden was unavailable for the game, and Jack Brady was on the substitutes bench. Noel, I know you've already mentioned that you think that he'll stick with Dean Georgian in the corner up front. If Ludden, Brady are available this week, obviously you'd imagine Brady will replace Wynne and Ludden will be straight back into the team. And we obviously know that Jack Lynch is probably not available again for another while. We probably weren't given the full information on that injury, but that looks to be the case. But, I don't think there'll be wholesome changes unless you have O'Riordan and Ludden back in, and obviously Brady.
Yeah, I think those guys will come in. I'm sure that it was just a run out for Conor Wynne. We saw that earlier in the season as well. He's in very, very good form, in fairness to him, and hasn't made too many mistakes lately. Mark Ludden obviously is a shoe-in every week. He's fit, being obviously one of Treaty's most consistent players as well. And in terms of his set piece deliveries, we talk about the long throws, the free kicks, and I would include penalties in that one now between now and the end of the season as well. The midfield, with Mark Walsh after coming in and releasing Callum McNamara, we're saying Lee Devitt's in good form. Dean George and Enda Curran have scored over 20 goals between them, which is a really, really great return. Yeah. It's a long time since any Limerick team had a couple of strikers, to get those figures. And the only places you're looking, are the wide areas. And, in fairness to Tommy, he's chopped and changed there, which is fine. Stephen Christopher is obviously available. Willie Armshaw, you've Matt Keane, you've Joel Costrain. And again, I would be saying, you try to be solid on one side and maybe have a more flair pair on the other side. I think, in fairness to Willie Armshaw, probably deserves a start there as well. I don't know if Matt Keane is fit or not. But whoever starts there will probably be replaced, and the other two would come in as well. So you've Connor Melody, who obviously played last week as well. They're in really good form, and they have plenty of options. And it's important to pick the right team and try and get a goal up there. And Tommy would say himself, the first goal is so important in these games. And I think they're plenty big and strong enough to actually get that first goal themselves and dictate the rest of the game from there.
Yeah, and maybe on an off-topic note, Noel, we've seen it with managers now in the recent years. It's become a bit of a trend where managers play their goalkeeper, their first-choice goalkeeper in the league, and their second-choice goalkeeper plays in all cup competitions. That seems to be the way Tommy Barrett has approached this. I'm not so sure it would be the same situation come a quarter-final.
No, and I think he's right. And look, if you are, example, drawn away to Shamrock Rovers, you're going to have to put your best 11 on the pitch. And I don't think anyone will argue that, at the moment, Jack Brady is the number one, and there may be a bit of sentiment early in the season, but, you're at the business end of it now, and what a massive opportunity, and it'll be great for Treaty as well, because, they probably do need to raise their profile kind of nationally, because, if you move outside the region, people aren't still quite sure what is the story with Treaty. And sure, a good cup run and maybe a semi-final on RT2 on a Friday night or a Sunday even will certainly add to their profile.
Certainly, and we hope that will be the case. You mentioned earlier on, Noel, that Wexford obviously have a tough game against Waterford, but they have won there already this season. I'm not going to name names, Noel, but there does seem to be a bee in the bonnet of certain Treatyites about the amount of coverage Wexford are getting in the general media. I hope they're not aiming that at us as well, but the general media about, how well they've done this season, and there's a bit of we're still 4 points ahead of Wexford, and there isn't as much discussion about us. Would you find that what way would I put this? Would you accept that argument on the part of the Treaty players that maybe they haven't got as much credit as they deserve and Wexford have had too much?
Yeah, I probably would. And I know obviously from being there, and particularly say with Ian Ryan as the manager there, they love their dubs in the media, and they certainly get first call. It's always been like that. But look, at the end of the day, it'll be all about who finishes fifth. And I even spoke to someone in Wexford last week, and I was like, everything looked great last week. They've done Dock at home, and they're 2-1 up with a few minutes to go, and it looks great. And all of a sudden, they're beaten. Then look, if they lose again this week and Treaty win, well then, like, you can really say that their season is wrapped up. So look, at the end of the day, it's results business, and you can have all the media coverage you like, but it's all about where you finish in the table, and that's where it really counts.
Yeah, we do wish Treaty the best of luck in their endeavours this week. And also, we'll obviously be discussing that and hopefully discussing a 7-point advantage, if we're lucky, for Treaty going into the next round of fixtures. So my thanks once again to Noel O'Connor, and we hope you join us for what will be a milestone for us here, Soccer Scene, next week with 30th episode, and we will hopefully be here in the full of our health. So thank you very much for joining us.